Too much to talk about right now that I don't want to distract the information, so tune in just a few hours where we come back to talk about Bailey Michael Beckers. It's a very important case. But I want to reflect on what's been happening over the last several weeks, as well as what happened right here in our own lobby. That's going to roll into what we are doing locally when it comes to school threats and assessment and violence and preparation. I'm going to share with you some startling facts. I'm going to share with you what we've been doing, the kind of threats that we deal with on a regular basis as law enforcement in the county and around the state of Michigan. And then it's going to probably answer some questions that you have right now. So just stay tuned. We've got a lot to show you. We have pictures, we have videos, and we're going to begin right now. So this is an example of what happened on the 1st of May, which was a Sunday afternoon, just shortly after 2 o'clock. Aaron Athey, A-T-H-E-A, walked into a lobby. He's 24 years old, brandishing a firearm. You can see by his demeanor, he's pointing it. You can see that firearm could cause great fear for people coming into this facility as well as people in the lobby of this facility. But it gets more and more complicated because the facility that he came into was the Genesee County Jail. A little after 2 o'clock, Anthony Athey came into this facility, a secure facility, holding a firearm, pointing at the people in the lobby on a Sunday afternoon. There are staff members that we have 24/7 that run the jail. And you're going to see in a second the video of this transpiring. But when you look at the bravery and the courage of Sergeant Holland, Deputy Randy Smith, Sergeant Tisdale from Flint PD, when the call went out, Tisdale is a police officer with a vest and a gun. But Holland and Smith are from the jail. They came out and they were dispatched to the lobby with a man with a gun. And they were able to isolate him right here at the corner of 5th and Saginaw and take him into custody. Deputy Roy, paramedic deputy, was dispatched. Sergeant Galaja, they all came, and that's where he was taken into custody. In fact, I have, for your viewing pleasure, the actual firearm that you saw being waved in the lobby of a police department. And there it is. It's a cap gun. This is what we talk about when it comes to de-escalation, when it comes to force continuum. When I showed you the picture of the actual suspect waving the gun, I think anybody watching right now could see and believe that perhaps that looks like a real gun. In fact, when you look at the first picture and now you see it's a cap gun, I don't think anybody at a hypersensitive state could determine if it's a real functional weapon or a cap gun. But yet coming into a building, any public building where there's innocent people, one would believe that that's a firearm. Now this happened on the 1st of May. And the reason I'm highlighting this story is because that's how right law enforcement has to be. And that's how right people responding to the scenes, both civilians and law enforcement, have to be. There is no room for error. There's no delay when it comes to a firearm in a public facility. There's no waiting for response. Our own procedures here in Genesee County at the Sheriff's Office is whenever there's a threat, you do not wait. When there's an active threat, an active shooter, there's not even a wait for a backup. There's a message that we've been sending throughout law enforcement, especially through this office, that if you are the only one there and you hear shots fired, you go. You do whatever you need to do to get to the threat and stop the threat. So when people ask, what is the law enforcement's response? I can only speak as the sheriff. Our response is, it doesn't matter who you are, wherever the incident happens. If you hear shots fired, you go. You don't wait for tactical gear. You don't wait for other people. You go. They will come. That's our response. Now, I can say that because we always act how we're trained. And this incident that happened, and not only here across the country, but we just experienced with our friends from Oxford, we saw what a good procedure looks like. And if you talk to those that responded, those brave and courageous public responders, as well as the teachers and the students, the system worked. Although there was death and casualty, the subject ran out of targets because the school operated as they were trained. And so when something happens, you always, even if you have a procedure in place, you always review it and say, how can we be better? How do we as a county become better? How does the sheriff's response and how does the local chiefs respond? We get better at what we're doing. We learn from Oxford. We learned from Las Vegas. We just had them in. We had Las Vegas Metro PD fly in last Wednesday. We had 253 people representing 83 counties and cities and townships across the state, right here downtown Flint, for an 8-hour training of what happened in Las Vegas nearly 5 years ago, where a mid-60s-year-old male shot 1,100 rounds in 11 minutes. How do we learn from that? So that's always happening behind the scenes. But a question that I've gotten over the last several days is, Sheriff, how bad is it here? What are we doing? So I have some specifics for you. Now, the Sheriff's Office works with other SROs throughout the county. Flushing have SROs, and Grand Blanc, and Mount Morris. I mean, there's a lot of local agencies that have school resource officers in buildings. There's local churches that have incredible security procedures. My own home church, The Rock, they have great procedures, and they have people that are volunteering to be the eyes and ears to protect those that are worshiping. And those things have to happen. But when it comes specific to schools, I want to share a story. You can't see it very well, but to protect the innocence of this individual, as well as the innocence of the school, I use it as an example. This is a green folder that on the outside of the folder, everywhere you see written in different, both print and cursive, is the word help. Dozens and dozens and dozens of times, there's help written high across here. There's a pentagram right there. Help, 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 help. On top of that, there was also a page where it was all sad faces. Hundreds and hundreds of sad faces written all over paper. There was a list of students. There was a list of students written on a separate piece of paper. It was a kill list. On top of it, it even said murder list. We found out because a brave student of this 6th grader came forward, reported it to the school resource officer, a uniformed police officer, one who is assigned to the school district that's built relationships, went to that SRO on the 5th of May, 2020, and said, this individual has a list. And the system kicked in. Our system of how we handle threats is the same no matter how old the threat, no matter where the threat, no matter what we think it could or could not be. It's the same thing. When the call comes in, whether it's a platform that we have or somebody brings it to us, we dispatch an overwhelming amount of uniformed police presence. We dispatch investigators to the scene, a school, a church, it doesn't matter. We isolate the threat immediately, take them into custody. It just happened in Swartz Creek. They did a great job isolating the threat. From there, we find out what are the means. Is there a probability? We find out and we do searches. We interview friends and family. We search lockers and cars. We go to their houses, even a 6th grader house. We go to the house. We interview parents and guardians and grandparents. And in this particular case of a 6th grader who had access, but in 6th grade, we still took 2 handguns and a rifle. Legally purchased, owned by the adults in the house, 2 handguns and a rifle. They were very cooperative in us taking and securing because obviously they don't want the burden. That 6th grader was immediately plugged into a mental health pipeline of the school. The situation was documented. Everybody is obviously watching and monitoring the system. They're on this now radar of potential threats. But do you know that from January 1st until this recording, January 1st to this recording, just the Sheriff's Office has responded to and investigated 56 threats of violence. 56. And I'm going to read you some of these. Student threatened to shoot another kid. He attempted to come into his house and beat him up. Student took a Snapchat picture of an AR-15 and AK-47 and said, quote, don't come to school tomorrow. Student talked about making a bomb and how bombs and what they could do to blow up a middle school. Student stated that she had a gun in her backpack. Student was making drawings of firearms and comic characters while being killed. Student threatened to shoot another student over a Google Hangout meeting. Student was found to be in possession of a BB gun on school property. Student stated they had a gun in the restroom. They threatened to shoot another student. Another student threatened to shoot a student. Threatening drawings and gestures. Instagram statement. These are all individual cases that we investigate as a Sheriff's Office that make up those 56. Snapchat photo of a handgun. A shoot up a school statement on his social media. Kill students with a knife statement. Hurt somebody statement. Shoot with a Glock. Kill list. I'm going to drive the point even home, farther. A 9-year-old female student stated that she was being bullied and she's going to bring a weapon to school, 9 years old. 11-year-old student making threats to others. A student told the school counselor he received a bad haircut. Threatened with a weapon, search revealed no weapon found, protocol in place. A 17-year-old male made threat to another 17-year-old female over making calls and bringing a Glock to school. A 15-year-old male student and a 15-year-old female student state they were going to shoot up the school after lunch. A 15-year-old male student who told other students that he wanted to harm himself and other students. Another 12-year-old male student made a threat on Snapchat. A middle school student called in threats. This is what's happening across America today. There are 152 elementary, middle school, high school, public and private colleges and universities in Genesee County alone. 152 buildings in places that people go to learn, where educators are trying to do their job, their calling, their profession. Of those 152, 32 of them are high schools, 26 are middle schools, and 71 of them are elementary schools. When you look at the breakdown and you see the range, and I hope that is stunning to you as much as it is to us every single day. In fact, as of this recording, we have a team dispatched to another school for another group of threats that came in. We treat them, and they should be treated, just like any other threat that could be fatal. There is no days off. There is no time off. You take them serious, and you take them all the way till you feel comfortable. And when I say you, that means all of us. That means schools and parents and those that come forward. The bravery of people that recognize something to bring forward. These are the ones reported. And I share this with you because we're going to ask, what do we do next? What is the next response? I can tell you that the things that I'm talking about, the protocols, that is in police departments across the country, and as well it should be. But every sheriff and chief, if they're worth their salt, they're going to review their policies and figure out how to become better. Just this morning, I met with the superintendent of GISD. I met with the teachers union representative. In fact, we have another meeting with all the supers next week. I'm meeting with all of the MEA local presidents because I want people to realize that this is an us issue. This has to be something that all of us together, meaning when you're taking your kids to school, you as a parent or as a guardian or a brother or sister are looking in the parking lot for possible threats. You're also watching social media of those that are in the school, that are those coming forward. That's incredibly brave when you see something that's not right. When you're out there and you're at a school event, you see something that's suspicious, report it and get somebody to take action. There's a lot of narrative as to what could happen, but we already have things that we can make happen right now, immediately. We don't need people to tell us what more we can do. There are things that we can do right now. Secure our locations and build relationships with your law enforcement. Law enforcement build relationships with parent groups and school groups and have threat assessments. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, you always perform in chaos as you train in peace. And that's what happened in Oxford is when those protocols kicked in, although sad and tragic, lives were saved. When you look at 56 threats that just we investigated, what could those have turned into? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know this. That we've kept people safe, and we're going to continue to do it. And we're going to play the odds of doing it right every single time. And we're going to treat them exactly the same way. It doesn't matter if they're 6 years old, 6th grade, or 16. It does not matter. Because if you look at stats, the average shooter that we see, 75% of them are 18 and younger. And they pick soft targets. And they find people that are unsuspecting. But I will tell you this. You have a force that will be there. And it's law enforcement. But we can't do it alone. We need your help. There may be some questions that are being generated. But before I end, I want to tell you that on the briefings, we've come up with something that we're going to do on a regular basis. And that is just kind of really an overview list of some of the calls that we've had in the last week. Some of the business of the Office of Sheriff that I think you'll find interesting. Number one, we have a jail overcrowding issue. We have things that are happening. We're working on that. Number two, our paramedics continue to answer calls. Number three, we have a list of things that are going on. Smash jobs. We had 4 juvenile runaways that ran away, but all of them are returned, 4 separate incidences. We've got people that are leaving their vehicles open and their cars are being ransacked and credit cards and debit cards being used in stores around that immediate vicinity. Lock your cars. We have an individual who assaulted his girlfriend, choked around the neck. He blew a .35, which is the alcohol content, 3 times above the legal content. He's arrested in jail for felonious assault and domestic. Got another incident where a guy went over to his ex-girlfriend's house and pointed a gun at her and his face. He's under arrest for felonious assault, domestic, at OWI. That's out of Fenton Township. We also had a deputy in the jail while doing a rounds. An inmate tried to disarm that deputy and take their taser through the bean chute. We had multiple larcenies. This is a vehicle that is a suspect of multiple larcenies. It's an older model white Yukon, and you'll see that it's got a luggage rack on top. And this is the individual that's stealing out of the vehicles, doing smash jobs, and then walking in the stores immediately and buying cigarettes, alcohol from those vehicles. So I know we covered a lot. Remember to tune in. In a minute, I'm going to show you a video. We're going to tune in later this afternoon about Bailey Beckers. I showed you the firearm and how we de-escalate, but now I'm going to show you the actual video so we can focus on that, and now we can get our media to change. So this is the inside part of the lobby of the Genesee County Jail, and this is the incident that happened when I started it, where that individual is in the jail. That's a screenshot. That is literally our front mat. This is Saginaw Street right here. And this is on May 1st, a Sunday. This is the video. Can you replay that one more time? So what's happening here is the individual runs outside, walks outside, and waves the gun. Can you see what he's doing? He's actually shooting. There's no way to tell that that's a cap gun versus a functional weapon. I want to play that one more time from the inside back to the outside. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes to the presence of mind in law enforcement. The presence of mind of those that are responding to make quick assessments instantaneously to be 1,000% right every time. The inside of the lobby. Suspect comes over, that's Athey. He's waving his gun. He's already waved at the people inside the jail lobby. People are already responding from the jail. He walks outside the main doors towards Saginaw Street and acts as though he's pulling the trigger. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom. I say that because, man, I'm just so proud of the police. I really am. I'm proud of the people that responded, that saw the incident, and they responded in courage with no weapons, no vest. The sergeant and the deputies, just amazing. But I want you to know, and the reason we do these briefings is we are working to become better every day. That's why I call it police evolution. That was yesterday, how to become better. But those that you see responding to 911 calls, those are real American heroes that you know personally. And if you know them, you know their name and their face, and you coach with them, or you kids go to school together, just give them a thank you and encourage them to keep doing it. Because this is what law enforcement deals with on a daily basis, and this is what we deal with in this county. So thank you very much. Are there any questions? I don't normally do this, but there's a lot of media out here, and I want to be sensitive to your journey here. So go ahead and I'll repeat the question.
How many reports a day do you estimate that you get from threats of violence in schools?
So the question is, how many reports a day do we get for threats of violence at school? It literally depends. And again, we are only covering, we have 11 SROs in the sheriff's office. There are others out there. But I think it's safe to say there's usually upticks, and then there's a slowdown. So we're going into the Memorial Day. We did not expect to have one today because most of the schools were out, but yet we've dispatched a whole team to answer one today. If I had to guess, and you saw there was 56 that we responded to from January 1st. Now, that's got weekends in there and snow days and Easter break and all those, and we still had nearly 60. So it is on a sometimes daily basis that we respond to threats, some more than others, but also agencies are responding to threats that we don't even know, or there's threats that the school are taking care of that are much less that we respond to. But I would not be surprised if it doesn't happen on a daily basis.
Is that on average compared to last year, or is it more than from last year this time frame?
So the average is hard to determine right now, but I can tell you we had a huge uptick after Oxford, which is why my colleague David Layton, the prosecutor, charged people for making threats because they wanted to instill more fear in Genesee County, piggybacking off the evil that was done by an individual. So we saw an uptick and then we saw it slow down, but it just seems it ebbs and flows, and there's no rhyme or reason. Just like go back to the ideology of the Las Vegas shooter. To this day, the fifth largest police department in the country, Las Vegas Metro PD, cannot find a motive as to why he killed 60 people and wounded 420.
When it comes to the prosecutor filing those charges, the updated list as of yesterday was 30 plus charges of these minors, 11 alone at Carmen Ainsworth Middle School. So these are serious. We've had this discussion countless times. How do you get that point across?
So you're right. We have charged people. When I say we as a community, the prosecutor charges, law enforcement arrests. You have over 30 people that have been charged, and I'd love to answer that because we keep driving it home, and we have our SROs, we're telling the stories, and it just keeps happening. And I think the key is not to give up, it's to tell the story more and to let people know that there's a consequence for making idle threats, to being a domestic terrorist, because that's what they are. When you instill fear into a community, and it's within the United States, that's a domestic terrorism threat. And that's what people need to realize. And I think we have to respond, and we have a heavy police presence, and we hold them accountable, whether it's the juvenile detention center, whether it's here at the jail, whether it's mandatory counseling, expulsion. I mean, we just have to continue, because I don't know of those 30, could there have been 90, and we stopped those other 60. I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you, if there's a threat made in this county at these schools, this community takes it serious, as do others. There's some great policing out there that's all over the state and the country, but that's how you just keep pounding that message, that there's a consequence for making threats, no matter if you're 6 or 16.
You mentioned that if people see something, to say something, but I mean, we learned in school not to be a tattletale. So how do you retrain people to speak up?
So the question is, back in the day, tattling or telling could be seen as a weakness, but it's a strength. And I think when you see people of influence asking you to do it and encouraging you and actually edifying you as courageous, then it changes the stigma of saying something. But I think in today's world, people need to say something because lives depend on it. We're talking lives, human lives, your friends. It could be your favorite teachers. It could be your best friends. It doesn't matter. I think that the stigma has worn off now that it ever has before. There's different apps that schools are using that can have anonymous tips sent. We use those. But I think with social media, direct messaging, we'll protect identity. But the key is you've got to say something. There's no just one group that is important. Every one of us is important.
You said that majority of the shooters are 18 and younger. So do you support the movement that people have of that the legal age to purchase a gun should be raised to 21 and not 18? And do you think that the parents who allow these children to have access to a gun should be charged as well, along with the child for the threats?
So there's a couple questions in there. Number one, 18 to 21 as far as gun ownership and gun usage, and then should parents have culpability if they allow their loved one to have access to when they know there's red flags? So the first one is there's a big difference between 18 and 21. And if you look at the physiological makeup of a brain, we don't fully develop until age 25. And so when you look at somebody who has a desire to get a concealed weapon permit, they have to be 21 because that's a big responsibility. But they can buy a weapon at 18? Absolutely. Fully support the more mature people are to get access to a weapon, the more people are safe. It doesn't change anything as far as the right to own a weapon, but it shows gun responsibility. I think if we start turning the narrative to just gun responsibility, then people realize that it's not a threat on gun ownership. I'm a supporter. I'm a constitutional sheriff. I understand that. But I think those messages have gotten blurred. But I think when you see what happens, it just makes sense to do something. And I use this example, the September 10th, 2001, nobody would ever have thought you would go to an airport and have to take off your shoes, your belt, and be scanned. But something major happened, and now we have trained, and it hasn't stopped anybody from flying. I like gun responsibility, and that falls on those that are adults within the house. And that is not only just gun responsibility, but also gun safety, weapon safety, looking at the mentality and the red flags within your own home and in your own community. If you feel like there's a threat, then remove the weapons. That's what we do right now. We take them, we put them in safekeeping. We're not charging. But if there's a fail to act, just like in anybody watching that has a duty to report, there is legal culpability that people are being held accountable, i.e. in Oxford. And so I think the message is loud and clear that those that have weapons should be responsible enough and should have an age where they can control emotions, that they don't have red flags, that they're not seen as somebody who has done a kill list. That's where I think the conversation that people who maybe at one point been against it can realize the logic of it. It's gun responsibility.
The school in Texas, I looked at the district's safety plan and it was very deliberate. It laid everything out. So with a plan like that and still things went wrong down there, how do you ensure that that does not happen here?
Well, I look at past practice, and I can tell you, we saw it live on December 21st when our own officer and a Burton officer were shot, and a suspect was killed in the exchange of gunfire. And we saw people within seconds pour into it. Regardless of it being a police-involved shooting, we had 2 people shot. We had a suspect down. It was an active shooter at the time. We had reports that he was firing in the air, and the response was not delayed. And I think we have to be very conscious of protocols and procedures are great on paper. They check a box, but it's the mentality. In fact, just after this briefing, you're going to, you won't see it, but internally, I'm reiterating the message to our own staff, just like I told you here on the briefing, that we do not wait. That you hear shots fired, you go, no matter what rank you are, no matter how much experience you have, you stop the threat. Then you secure the scene, then you treat patients, and then you give out information. And I think those messages, it comes from the top. It comes from chiefs and sheriffs and undersheriffs and deputy chiefs and captains and lieutenants and sergeants. But the officer has to already be trained. If this happens, this is what I'm going to do. Remember, you always perform in chaos how you train in peace. Protocols and policies on paper are great, but it's a mentality you have to train to go and stop the threat.
With the jail overcrowding, is this a big issue right now in Genesee County?
It's always been a big issue about jail overcrowding. We're rated for 580. We're the 5th biggest sheriff's office in the state of Michigan. We've got 28 police departments. We have a high crime area. I just showed you people, and I'm going to highlight another person who's locked up in jail with a $320,000 bond, as he should be. But there's only so much room in the inn. And that 580 is established by the state of Michigan Department of Corrections. Anytime we go above 580, there's a constitutional requirement that the sheriff of this county enacts a jail overcrowding policy. So as days go on, we work with the chief judges to reduce bonds, to perhaps people that have a nonviolent charge to be released on tether. We try to open up bed space. And what's happening is we have, a logjam of violent offenders. Over 60% of the people in the jail now have 20-year life charges. Like, you can't let those folks out. So if we're not helping the cases be pushed through, then what happens is you have the top end doesn't move, the bottom end continues to come down, and that's what we're seeing. So we're day, I think, 17 right now. We're working with the courts, but this is a systemic solution, is we need to push people through the courts. We need to get them to take pleas and do our trials. We'll work with the prosecutor, the courts, and the judges to do that. But it's not going to be the last time we experience it, and it hasn't been.
And so when it comes to letting out people on tethers, does that cause for concern for the people here for more crime?
So the question is putting people out in tether. COVID made a lot of sheriffs believers that tether is a viable option, even for people that have been charged with a heavy crime. What happened is we were mandated by the state court administrator's office to put people out on tether. We were mandated by the courts. See, the sheriffs work on court order. So whether I think it's a good idea or not, I put all my arguments out there, but if a judge says I want this person on tether or not, then we obey court orders. So I think there's a risk anytime you put somebody out, but we are very thankful. We have nearly 200 people on tether today, and we have had a great success, and we do have people that cut their tether off and don't report. We follow up on those, but tether is a viable option because there are no others.
Going back to you saying the quick response, what are your thoughts on the allegations that it took, officers an hour to go into Robb Elementary to get this to secure the area and to get the suspect?
So the question is about the timeline that happened in Texas, and because I'm getting the same information you're getting, and I know from the back end, we don't have all the details, but I will answer the question this way, that I think police departments are looking at their processes right now, and if anybody found that their staff waited an extended period of time instead of going in there, I don't care if you have to bust a window, climb through an air conditioning vent, whatever you got to do to get access to stop the threat, that's what we do. So there is no time delay. There is no waiting for a tactical team in this community. We learned that heavy in Columbine in 1999. We saw, what's happening, and you just have to go. Because remember, and I know this is going extended, but I hope this is valuable information for you. A hostage situation is way different than an active shooter. A hostage situation where somebody has a weapon but no shots fired, you have time to negotiate, set up a perimeter, try to talk to them, even with people there. But as soon as the trigger's pulled, they're committed. And at that point, they're only going to stop for two reasons. Number one, they choose to. Or number two, they're stopped and met with an equal or greater threat. That's it. There's no negotiating. There's no nothing. If they decide to stop, that's one option, or they will be stopped by an equal or greater threat. There's no time delay. And I will tell you, if you look at a sheriff cars, we have sergeants that work 24/7 in the community. We have breaching tools in every sergeant's car, which is a shield, a Halligan, which is a pry bar, a tactical pry bar, and a ram. So any door that we need to get into, any window, if you have to breach, you have to breach.
And being that, you've gone through 56 threats here, you're a parent, I'm assuming.
Yes.
When you heard about what happened at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, what was going through your head?
So the question is, what was going through Chris Swanson's head when he heard that as a major call, and I was on my way to an event, and the first thing I thought of is, I hope we're not missing something, because these poor people have just been murdered. Like little babies and teachers that go there, that's immediate. So Chris Swanson went fast back to Sheriff Swanson, and we immediately, secure our schools. And the next day, we had a heavy police presence in all our schools. But I think anybody that had heard the story around the world can relate to somebody that they know that could have been in that situation. And then when you see the aftermath, you see a poor husband who dies of a fatal heart attack because of the grief. I mean, we deal with victims. I mean, anybody in law enforcement, if they've been over 10, 15 years, they've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dead people. They've been through scenes, true suicides and homicides. I mean, it takes a toll. To have it the most people I've ever seen in a fatal scene was 6, and I have never forgotten that day. I can't imagine what 19 and a teacher looks like. 19 and carnage. So, not to get melodramatic, but the key is, how do we keep that from happening here? Which is why we're doing these briefings, and is why we didn't do something on Wednesday as a knee jerk, and we have a strategy. And although we may not be on camera, your teams are working 24/7, and your officers are out there, and we're meeting with superintendents and principals and unions and parents, and that's what we're doing. Well, if there's one more, I'll take it. Otherwise, we're going to end. Anybody? Well, listen, again, I appreciate the media for using your platform. It's vital to get the information out. I would ask those that are watching to take action, evaluate whatever circle of influence you have. Are you doing everything you can to keep people safe? Work with us, work with your local law enforcement. And again, I'll see you later this afternoon. Reference Becker. Be safe.